15-10. Touchdown, Chargers.
Well, it's Chargers Weekly on the road in Charlotte. As always, joined by the voice of the Chargers, Matt Money Smith. After the Chargers dominate the Panthers 26-3, they're 2-0 Money for the first time since 2012, and good vibes all around here in the Queen City.
Yeah, it was kind of just such weird stats that came out of that game, right? As we were calling it, and my man Ben, who does the road games for us, is feeding me, first time that we've had a running back go over 100 yards in back-to-back games to start a season in Chargers history. I'm like, why? With LaDainian, really? With Natro and me? So you had that. You have now, after the first two of this year, 23-1 are the Chargers since 2000 when rushing for more yards than passing yards. And it's all stuff that we've never seen, since 2017 when I joined the team. They're just stats that I've never heard anything about because of how well they're running the ball. So it's a lot of fun to find out. And I thought Popper had the best one. That kudos to him for coming up with it. That Justin Herbert has passed for fewer yards in two games through two games of a season than in any time in his career. He didn't play game one of his rookie season.
Exactly.
He passed for more yards in his first ever NFL game than he has in back-to-back games. And the Chargers are 2-0.
Yeah, yet they're 2-0. And another crazy stat, J.K. Dobbins, 27 carries. He's averaged 9.5 yards a pop or something ridiculous. And I think next in line is Jordan Mason, who has 20 more carries than he does. I mean, J.K. has really paced this offense through the first two games. Gus Edwards had a lot of carries in that game, too.
It's a big part of it. He's a big part of why they were successful.
Yeah, just in the offensive line, man. The push that they're getting and the smiles on their faces in the locker room, man, is priceless.
Well, you mentioned Gus, and I think if you want to watch a single play that encapsulates what this team is all about, it's the touchdown run from J.K., right? Because you have Gus, who was signed as, what he probably thought was the lead back when he signed, before J.K. was signed. He's lined up at fullback. Matlock is attached to the left side of the line. Matlock seals the inside part of the lane. Gus, as his lead blocker, seals the outside lane on a corner, and that's how J.K. breaks free down the left sideline. A defensive lineman who was converted to fullback with 2 weeks left in training camp, and your lead back who was asked to be the lead blocking fullback, and that's how J.K. gets 45 yards and a touchdown, and everybody's celebrating, as he makes his way into the end zone.
You mentioned Matlock. Before we go any further, I just have to get this out of the way. This is Scott Matlock on Sunday. 45 offensive snaps, 29 special team snaps, and 23 defensive snaps. And it just goes to your original point of all these wild things that we're seeing in stats.
Yeah.
You have a defensive tackle converted to a fullback who is playing multiple snaps on special teams, offense, and defense. Man, we call him a legend. He's a legend.
Yeah, I mean, he's a core 4 special teams player, so he's going to be in on all of those snaps, and obviously with all the punts, because Carolina couldn't convert third downs, he was out there a lot. And he's part of that D-line rotation, especially as they were getting Puna and Morgan, those guys a bit of a rest at the end of the game. Scott, that's probably why his snap counts were up a little bit, but it's funny. It's like, Coach, I can't get a break here. I mean, I get it. Yeah. I get that you want to make sure that Tito and those guys are getting their breathers here, but I got these fullback snaps, that I'm kind of running through. So it's kind of funny that he was the one that had to wear it on a couple of those late fourth quarter possessions when the game was out of the balance.
The game was never in doubt, and I go through the first two games, and obviously you have Gardner Minshew under center and Bryce Young under center, so it's not necessarily Mahomes and Burrow or Josh Allen, but you play who's in front of you, and after two games, this defense, unbelievable, have allowed just to combine 13 points. 2 of 15 the Panthers were on third and fourth down. It was remarkable to see, and the linebackers humming around. Denzel, Dayon got a game ball. What did you see defensively?
Yeah, I think Dayon had double-digit tackles, had the tackle for loss. Denzel has the huge sack that takes him out of field goal range, and I think really sets the tone for the day that Bryce Young didn't flip that thing out of bounds and took that bad sack, and there was just bad body language on that sideline the whole game for the Panthers, and that's what it's what we talked about going into that game. You can't give the Panthers an inch. You want to suck the belief out of them from the start, and they were able to do that, jumping them 20-0 at the half. From where we were sitting, it's a great broadcast position where we called the game, and We're watching Deontay Johnson throw his helmet. We're watching Jadeveon Clowney. Yeah. He's all upset on the side. We were a game and a half into the season, and that's what it looked like down there. And that was imperative for the Chargers to do that. It's not a good team. It's probably the worst team I've called a game for since I've been doing this with the Chargers in 2017. I don't think I've ever seen kind of just things that have gone bad. The injuries, no Derek Brown out there. There's very little talent competitive talent that might start for other teams across the league. I mean, obviously it's still an NFL team. They're still good players, but I think you have to exploit that, and you have to dominate that, and you have to impose your will. And they did that by running repeatedly on third down to convert to first down. You saw the push the offensive line was getting. You talked about that, and build confidence for those guys, because now you're going back-to-back against a Steelers front that might be the best, when you factor in Hayward in the middle and Highsmith and Watt on the outside and Ogunjobi's in there like that. That's probably the best front they're going to see all season. And then you're going to back that up with Chris Jones and Chenal and what Steve Spagnuolo does. So build that confidence for that group, and that's what they've done through these first 2 weeks.
It's not just the defenses, too. As you look at the coaches, right? Antonio Pierce, first full year as a coach. Dave Canales, first year. Right. You go from there to Tomlin and Andy Reid,
exactly.
Followed by Sean Payton after the bye, and then the quarterbacks, too, with Patrick Mahomes week 4. And then this week it looks like it's going to be Justin Fields.
It seems like it.
But it's just, I think it's a product of good fortune, though. You play a team who isn't very good. You get to 2-0, but you learn about your team in the process. And this is going to be a step up in weight class against the Steelers. What are you looking for, especially, as we tape this too, guys, we're taping this on a Wednesday, so obviously things are going to change over the next couple of days as far as the injury report. Justin Herbert did not practice today. A number of guys did not practice. There's a fair amount of guys on the injury report.
And it's a prety healthy injury report right now.
Palmer's in the injury list. I think Colson didn't practice today.
Right.
So a lot of guys we're going to learn a little bit more about.
Yeah. So to me, it's as well as this offense. Coach talked about the jump you make from week 1 to week 2 and how important that week of practice is. And I think you saw that really show itself in the offensive line play. And again, it's level of competition. It's not Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins that you're going out there and taking on, but it just looked much cleaner. It was more connected than we saw in the game against the Raiders. So that to me is this offensive line that we saw from the second half of the Raiders game through the last 4 quarters, these last 6 quarters, as good as they appear to be, averaging 6 yards per carry on the season and putting up almost 200 yards per game running the ball. Is it that good? Because that's probably where this game's going to be decided, I think. That defensive front versus this offensive front. And I do think if it's healthy, the Chargers' defensive line should dominate their offensive line. They're having serious issues at tackle with Broderick Jones. He got put in for a series and got yanked in the middle of the series because he had a false start and back-to-back holding penalties. And Fatanu is not healthy, so they were trying to keep and limit his reps so they could rotate those guys, and they just had to stick him in there. They don't want Dan Long at tackle, but he's got to be because Jones has been such a bit of a disappointment as he's trying to figure it out, and he's hurt. He's got a brace on his arm, so they should be able to get after it with those tackles. The trick is going to be keeping your lanes for Justin Fields. He hasn't run a lot, but he's run 22 times. So you want to make sure you keep your lanes so he can't spring. But I think if the Chargers can at least stalemate T.J. Watt and Highsmith and Cam Hayward and those guys, then that to me is probably the path to victory.
I was just thinking about this. We talk about the Panthers. Obviously, they're not a very good football team, but maybe the Raiders are better than we thought. They go on the road, beat the Ravens, who are now 0-2, and you look at that first half of the Raiders game. It almost felt like preseason for a lot of the starters who didn't play, and they're just kind of getting their bearings, and obviously played a lot better in the second half. But maybe the Raiders are a little bit better than we thought, man.
Yeah, look, the league's weird, man. When you look at the stats, like the Ravens, you look at it and they just dominated them in terms of like yardage and moving the ball, and it just worked out that way. It's just odd. It's so hard to figure out early on, but I think just sort of going back to my last point, it feels like teams that are able to win with their offensive line, at the line of scrimmage on that side of the ball, are playing better, are the ones that we're seeing, with these wins. You think about, Atlanta. So, here's a good one. The Chargers, I think, the Chargers and the Steelers both our top 5 run defense. It's way up there. I don't know if it's 2 and 3 or it's something like that, right? It's way up there. So you watch the Atlanta game, though, and that's a team with a really good offensive line. And, dude, Bijan's busting off some runs against this Steeler front. Like, he's getting after it. There's a couple 10s, 15s in there. So I think it's out there. Like, they thoroughly dominated the Broncos offensive line. That's where all these numbers, very similar to the Chargers and with the Panthers and how lopsided that game was. That's kind of what you're seeing from these Steelers stats through 2 games is they absolutely dominated the Bronco offense. And what was interesting is,
how about Bo Nix? Maybe we pump the brakes on the Bo Nix talk now?
Well, and I think it's so much of it's, look, think about Joe Lombardi and like just that, how many plays there were. And like, I remember it was like, oh, it's like a Jerry's Deli menu. And it was like being celebrated. And it's Sean Payton. You're like, hey, dude, maybe take it easy on a rookie, even though he's 24. And maybe they're trying to do a little too much. So like, here's the thing I noticed. I watched the Atlanta game and I watched the Denver game. And it's a totally different looking defense. Against Atlanta, it's light boxes. It's a ton of 7-man boxes because they respected, Kyle Pitts and Drake London and all those weapons they have. Whereas against Denver, they're like, we don't respect Bo Nix. It's 8-man fronts, it's 9-man fronts, and they could not get anything going. So it'll be interesting to see, did Quentin put enough on tape? Did McConkey put enough on tape where the Steelers respect the passing game and respect Herbert, so we're going to see some light boxes and they can take advantage of it. It's going to be on the interior. I have full faith in Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater on the edges. Even though it's T.J. Watt and Alonzo Highsmith, I feel like they've proven themselves against Crosby and Wilkins and just absolutely stoning guys all game long against Carolina. So to me, it's, can that interior hold up against Hayward and those inside rushers and, who really get a lot of push in the run game.
If you go back to some of our podcasts during the offseason when J.K. was signed, I know you said, hey, this is low risk and this could really pay off. And, I mean, through 2 games, we're seeing a guy who is putting up ridiculous numbers. I mean, he had a 46-yard run in week 1. He had a 12-yard touchdown in week 1. He had a 61-yard run in week 1. Then he has a 43-yard touchdown in week 2 and just was gashing the Panthers. And, I asked JK after the game, I'm like, are you even exceeding your own expectations through 2 weeks? He's like, no, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And, Money, I just go back to the first training camp podcast we did with JK. And, there's some worry when you're coming off an Achilles. Like, are you going to be ready for training camp, right? And we didn't know if the coaches were going to try to kind of ease him in. But he was 100% from the beginning. And I think that's when we kind of knew that, okay, if he's 100% now, he's going to be ready to go at the beginning of the season. And boy, has he.
Yeah, it's, we were looking at all the running backs available. And even after they signed Gus, we felt like there was one more move to be made. And it was the one that we all wanted. It just made too much sense. It's like, this is a legitimate bell cow, elite, top 5 in the league back. You just have to trust that he's going to stay healthy. And with all the stuff we heard about Ben Herbert and how good he is at trying to figure these things out and keep guys healthy, it just seemed to line, not to mention, obviously, the connection to Baltimore. It just lined up. Yeah. And I think it had to line up for the Chargers on the JK side as well. Like, hey, I'm someone who should be making what DeAndre Swift is making, what David Montgomery is getting paid. Yeah, Josh Jacobs. Like, so how can I get back to that? What's my path? So you got to take a prove it deal for a place where you can do this and show that, you can be an elite back and maybe be an all-pro, a Pro Bowl or all-pro, because they're going to use them. But I want to go back to something you started with, Chris, and that's, like, do not underestimate, just because you look at the stats, what Gus Edwards is doing. Yeah. Like, he is so important to this.
He had more carries than JK, I think.
And it's just their physical, gnarly, punishing carries from Gus. I mean, you're watching the push that he gets with the guys that are coming up to tackle him, linebackers and safeties, and he is wrecking them. Even if it only goes for 2 yards or 3 yards, you're watching that connection, and it's that pushback. And that's why the game looked like it did in the fourth quarter of both of these games. When it's fun to watch, like the O-line, and you get to the fourth quarter, and I would never say the guys quit, but you'll just see there's not as much aggression. Like, you'll see him go, and you can almost just feel it coming through the screen of these guys like, oh, God, not again.
I feel like we felt it like in the second quarter of that game, though.
It
like
starts wearing on them.
Yeah, it wore on them early because, I was just going to mention that we've heard so many guys talk about, hey, you don't want to tackle us in the fourth quarter.
Right.
Well, I felt like the Panthers didn't want to tackle them in the second quarter.
Yeah.
Like it was 6-0. It felt like it was 21-0 at that point. And it actually opens up things for the outside, and we got to see Quentin Johnson with his best game as a Charger, 5 for 51, 2 first-half touchdowns. And that first touchdown, I tell you what, in terms of a confidence builder, it was a beautiful throw, but just that contested catch, I think that's exactly what Q needed early in this season to get some confidence and keep things rolling.
Yeah, look, it's one thing to be a huge contributor in the win against the Raiders, doing what we know you can do. And we talked about it, the grab that he had on that shallow crosser, where it was up here and he had to pin it up by his neck and then ends up going for an extra 16 to get into field goal range. Huge catch. But we know that that's what Q can do. Like, that's what he's supposed to be doing. It's like, hey, he's yak. He's just get him the ball and let him use that athleticism. This is what he struggled with, right? Tracking the ball over his shoulder, having sound hands. And to be able to pull it off against a really good corner, it's probably the one guy on the team that you would say could start for a lot of NFL teams in J.C. Horn. And to be able to pull it off, in press, beat your man right off, have Justin tell you, as he shared with us in the huddle, hey, if he presses and you get him, I'm coming. And, to have that whole thing come together is so good for his confidence. You get the second one when you break 3. It's a laser, and you secure that. And you carry that into a very physical Pittsburgh team where there's going to be a lot of hand fighting, a lot of contested catches, a very physical brand of football. And so it could not have come at a better time for Q. And I think the other good thing, Chris, that came out of that, the passing game, is, and, it's funny, DJ said it like right as I was thinking it. It was like the second spot route that Will Dissly ran, and he's like, does that remind you of little Andrew Luck, Kobe Fleener? And I was like, that's exactly what this is. It's the Stanford offense. You're watching them engage, slip, find your soft spot, settle, and you get an extra 5. And Dissly had one that went for like 16, and that's all Greg Roman used to run with Fleener, with Toilolo, with all of those tight ends, and they'd run out there with 3 at a time, and we saw that a couple times with Dickinson. Is it Dickerson or Dickinson? What is it? Dickerson? Eric? No, it's not Eric Dickinson. When you had 3 tight ends, I mean, they're running 13, they're running 22. Like, it's really starting to chug along with these jumbo packages, and it's getting to be a lot of fun.
Tell you what, Will Dissly, one of the most important players on this team for his ability to block, but also catch the football. And I was listening to Rich Eisen, and DJ was on, and he actually referenced a conversation that you guys had about Justin having a Clark Kent game.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Explain what that is.
Yeah, that he doesn't have to be Superman. You don't have to go into the phone booth. You can just kind of be you and let the world turn and not have to worry about bad things happening. Look, again, we're taping this on a Wednesday night in a hotel with a glorious chandelier over a 30-foot ceiling behind us
with some EDM in the background.
Exactly, a little bit of a techno soundtrack. So we don't know what the injury state's going to be when the game's kicked off, but. Like, look, if you ask me, Justin's going to play. The guy freaking plays through everything. He ran back out on the field and played. Yeah. But if you can afford to have another Clark Kent game, just hand it off 40 times, then hand it off 40 times and go out and get a 13-10 win. Yeah. That helps. In years past, it doesn't happen. Like, he's got to be mobile, Justin. He's got to be drop back 50 times, sling it, plant that foot, and let it fly, Justin. And because he doesn't have to do that, it allows you to maybe play through a little bit more pain because you're not asked to do as much because of how effective this front has been at blocking. You mentioned Dissly. Like, here's a great one. Go back and look. If you're listening, I don't know if it would be posted, if all the post-game comments are posted, but dig them up. Look at the game recaps and capsules. Look at Hayden Hurst's quotes, right? Hayden's signed to come in to catch passes. He can block, but he's your pass-catching tight end. He had 2 targets, 1 catch, 5 yards. Guy, after the game, sounds like he had 10 for 102 touchdowns, the way he was talking about how they dominated and that team's going to feel it for the next week, and we made our blocks and we imposed our will. Like, he's loving it, and so that's how you get your buy-in. You get your buy-in, and even though you're on all these 1-year deals and you're vets, you're in for the greater good. You're in for the bigger cause and playing together and winning games however you got to win them.
So believe them when they tell you. So when Coach says the offensive line are weapons, we're seeing it. Right?
Yeah.
You lead with the running game, we're seeing it. Like we have speculated who's going to be wide receiver one all camp, and we're seeing it. There's not necessarily a wide receiver one. Q has probably played the best of the first 2 games, but we haven't seen DJ Chark. Joshua Palmer got hurt last Sunday. We'll know more about his status as the week progresses. McConkey had a relatively quiet game week 2, but I think it's going to be different on the outside, but the constant is going to be just the pounding that Gus and JK give.
Yeah, it's the identity of the team, and I think Baldy's going to do a breakdown of Alt every week. He really is. This week he called him Mount Alty, which I appreciated. But there was one play, man, and I can't remember. It might have been a Gus run where Alt's pulling from his right tackle spot, and the interior tackle, 99, I don't remember who it was, maybe it's Shy Tuttle, but beats him. He gets to the spot kind of before Alt can get there, and he's tracking to maybe blow this thing up in the backfield. Alt's so long, he just gets one hand just far enough out onto the outside shoulder and is able to just shove him back and stop his problems. Like, this is stupid. Like, it's just ridiculous how long and strong.
Didn't Clowney have like the worst game he's ever had?
Probably.
PFF-wise or something. I forget what his score was, but I think Clowney had one of his. He's been in the league for a long time. But Alt with his helmet off. One time,
yeah, still blocking.
Still blocking. And what Rashawn's doing on the left side, man, is just he's been an absolute rock and an all-pro through the first 2 games. So, when you
by the way, I do want to say, because we rarely mention him, Trey Pipkin's having a really good start to the season. Like the first half of the first game, you could tell it was a little new and he was figuring out. But you watch the second half of that game through these 4 quarters, dude. He's, for someone that just started playing guard, he's really playing good football right now.
And I'll just say this, too. You look at some of the struggles around the NFL with some of these rookie quarterbacks, and people before the year would say, hey, Caleb Williams set up for success. He's got Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze and DJ Moore. If you don't have an offensive line, you're not going to be successful in the NFL. And getting Joe Alt at number 5 overall, knowing that you have Rashawn Slater, and knowing what Coach Harbaugh wants to do in terms of protecting his quarterback and running the football, other teams around the league don't subscribe to that. And you're seeing these rookie quarterbacks look like college quarterbacks right now.
Yeah, and I think more and more people are starting to come around to the idea that it's just crazy to play him so early. It's just, it's what the Chargers' plan was. It was to sit Justin, let Tyrod Taylor play, and then eventually hand it over to him, and it just didn't work out that way. Now, Herbert, of course, was exceptional, but I just think it's so unrealistic to think that they're going to be able to step in and be great right away. Every now and then you'll get one, C.J. Stroud, Justin Herbert, but it doesn't, Joe Burrow, but he ends up getting hurt. Like, it usually just doesn't happen that way. So, but yeah, your point is completely true, because what's the one common thread that we hear with all of them? And it's, you can't expect him to do anything. The offensive line can't block for him. So, okay, well, if you can't be productive with Rome Odunze taken at 9 instead of taking Fuaga or Fatanu there, then I don't want to hear about it. Like, you've got the option to do it.
Now you had DeAndre Swift in the backfield. If you could run block, that helped the quarterback.
Exactly.
If you could pass block, that helped the quarterback as well.
Exactly. And they've done it with, 3 first-round picks on the offensive line, and you're seeing it with Zion and obviously the tackles. If this keeps up, you're talking about the potential to have 2 all-pro tackles. Like, not Pro Bowl, 2 all-pro tackles, if this keeps up with how good of a start they've gotten off to.
Yeah, and, a guy like Bradley Bozeman, I'll share with you guys, we're in Charlotte all week, and yesterday, we're taping this on Wednesday, so on Tuesday, Bradley Bozeman, Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee in Baltimore and Carolina, he had an event at Second Harvest here in Charlotte, and it was like a food packing event, and it was really cool to see like 40 guys out to support Bradley. It was from Khalil to Joey to Joe Alt. I mean, these are like veteran all-pros on this team coming out for an hour and a half to help Bradley Bozeman. I just think that lends itself to just the camaraderie and the team building that you're seeing with Coach Harbaugh. It's not it's not like hyperbole. This is real. Like the bonding that we're seeing on the road and the togetherness that we're seeing with this team is real. And I think a trip like this, especially early in the year, will bode well for them down the line.
Yeah, especially because you got to buy so early. You know, your buy's coming up after week 4. So you get that early. They'll get their rest. They'll be able to hang out, you know, and not have to go on the road that week or play a game on Sunday. So that's kind of nice. Look, you hope it leads to a win. You know, it's great to be here. It's great to be around everyone. But ultimately what you want is it to help give you an edge, maybe as slight as it may be, to not have to fly the 5 hours back home and the 4.5 hours to Pittsburgh and have to reacclimate to the Eastern time zone, because I know I'm getting up at 6 a.m. Eastern time, which is going to be a joy when I get home on Sunday night.
It's not great.
Up at 1 a.m.
I have not. It's been 5 days
or something.
It's not been good. It's not been good for me.
But, you know, I'm up and it's basically 4:30. It's 7:30 here. It's 4:30 back home, and I'm already, you know, hanging out at the YMCA watching guys brick shots playing half-court basketball while I'm trying to get a run in. I forgot how bad YMCA basketball is, man.
I saw some of our equipment guys out there.
Holy cow. Yeah, I did. I saw Art and Chris and all those guys over there knocking it out. But no, like, these are like dudes who think they can ball at the YMCA, and I'm just doing my treadmill work and watching guys yell at each other for not passing. I was open in the corner, and these guys, you know, running to the rim and clanging balls off the bottom of the rim.
Fouls.
I'm like, this is terrible. I got to get off this treadmill. I can't watch this anymore. This is brutal. So yeah, I don't know. I don't even know how I got there, but the trip and the bonding. Yes, it's been great. You know, and I think it's been great for everybody. You know, for all of us that work together, and we typically see each other a couple hours on Sunday. You know, doing what we do. It's been nice to kind of hang around and enjoy the catering and a couple of the spots here in Charlotte.
Yeah, everybody's been great. And you know, I asked Coach today about it's an unconventional week, but he says, you know, things are moving like trains on time, man. You know, they have the ballroom set up with food and training tables and practice at UNC Charlotte. So we'll be out there tomorrow. On Location, official hospitality partner of the NFL and the LA Chargers, offering Chargers fans the opportunity to lock in verified Super Bowl tickets and access to exclusive pregame parties with an official VIP ticket package. Take your pick from the best seats at Caesars Superdome, including the most coveted seats at the 50-yard line, and exclusive access from private pregame parties featuring big-name entertainment, chef-inspired food, and top-shelf bar to post-game field celebrations. Incredible experiences are coming in hot. 5-star hospitality. Go first class all the way from the moment you arrive in New Orleans. Enjoy personalized concierge services, excursion planning, reserved parking, a VIP gifting suite, and many more premier perks. Visit onlocationexp.com/SBLIX or call 877-373-5062 to secure your ticket packages today. Pushing it forward to Pittsburgh, one of the things that you heard in week 1 was how, you know, Justin Fields didn't throw the ball middle of the field because of Jesse Bates. And, you know, Justin Fields is obviously he's a superstar at Ohio State. Coach Harbaugh knows him well. What challenges does he present that maybe Bryce Young and Gardner Minshew did not?
Yeah, legs. You know, you can run the ball. You can run the heck out of the ball if you let them break free. Now, they're not asking him to do a lot. They're just basically telling him, you know, kind of similar to what we saw against Carolina. You know, there were some 4th and 1s there that were like, wow, they're really going to punt. And it's like, yeah, where's the Carolina offense going? It ain't going anywhere against this defense. And it's very similar to what they're asking, you know, Justin to do. And that's even. And by the way, like, their rush attack has not been great. You know, Najee's at like 3.6 again. There have been very little explosives, but they don't care. They're still handing it to him. They're still protecting the ball. Now, I will say, like last week, you know, his numbers should have been a lot better than they were against the Broncos. You know, that I was talking about Broderick Jones. He had a hold on that 51-yard toss. It was a beautiful pass to George Pickens. Then you had a pick play on the touchdown to Pickens that got pulled off the board. So there were some throws out there that were negated by penalties that may or may not have really kind of directly related to play. So that's out there. To me, like, it's just I've seen too much. There's too much tape of Justin Fields holding onto the ball too long when he gets moved off his spot. And I think about those tackles and the opportunity of Khalil and Joey and Bud and Thule to just hopefully get him back into those bad habits, you know, to get that muscle memory to come back, to try to extend the play, and you're running it, you know, the sack numbers were ridiculous in Chicago of what this guy took. Like, you look at how long he held onto the ball, the amount of sacks, like, it's 3 years worth. So see if you can get him back to that. Stop the run, continue to stop the run, play the run well like they have been, and force them into obvious passing situations. And let's see if the Chargers can get that old Justin Fields to show up again. Bad decisions, taking sacks. They run a lot of 12 as well, so you're going to see a lot of Washington and Freiermuth. And we remember Washington when he was in the draft.
Massive.
He's gigantic, so they're out there all the time. Freiermuth's a great all-around tight end, so you're going to probably need to be pretty darn good against those two guys. I don't know if that's Derwin or if that's Dayon, and or who that might be, but that's something to keep an eye on. But yeah, I think Justin's numbers, his passer ratings, like in the mid-90s, they're good because he's just doing what Tomlin's asking him to do, and that's don't lose the game.
Yeah.
We'll figure out how to win it. Make sure you don't lose it.
The turnover differential is going to have to flip.
Yeah.
Justin had a couple of turnovers that just were a little uncharacteristic of him. But in terms of Justin Fields, you have to take those sacks and take it to another level. Strip sacks.
Yeah.
Try to get the ball from Fields, whether you're Joey, who's just an artist at strip sacks, as well as Khalil. And, Elijah Molden had a great interception
it's fantastic.
last week. That's another thing I wanted to talk to you about, because Molden was here he's been here for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And he is really just hand and glove fit in that secondary right now. What have you seen from Elijah?
Yeah, look, they needed him, and it's versatility. What did Coach Harbaugh call him during his presser? Chef Ortiz.
Chef Ortiz, yeah, he's been cooking.
Yeah, and so this is where guys get hurt. Alohi goes down. We know how important Alohi is to the defense. He's a guy that sees it. He's the last line of defense. He's very good at recognizing.
Somebody they need.
Yeah, so to lose him, to drop Finley into that spot, and then to bring Molden in and play a lot of three safeties. They played a lot. And for him to be able to get that pick, I think, not to mention he had the pick, but he also had, I think he might have 7 tackles. I think he was a second leading tackler as well. So you're talking about, like you said, someone who just showed up a couple weeks ago, and they do their study on him. It's worth making the exchange and surrendering a draft pick for him, and then all of a sudden he's needed, and he shows up and gets a game ball and helps you win a game. So depending on Lowe and whether or not he's ready to go, I think you feel pretty confident about running Finley and Elijah out there again, and depth's been a big part, a really big part of why this thing is working as well as it has through 2 games.
I love that Coach gave Elijah a game ball, and then everybody in the personnel department who identified Elijah as a Charger a game ball as well. It was pretty cool. But, we were also talking to Coach today, and it just – you may as well make this like a Ravens-Steelers matchup. Greg Roman knows the Steelers. The Steelers know Greg Roman. Coach Harbaugh's brother plays the Steelers twice a year.
Right.
From Bozeman to Gus to JK, there's so many Ravens associated with this matchup here on the LA side. This is going to be one of those 17-15 type games. I feel it.
It's a good year. It's a good year to have brought Coach Harbaugh in, right?
Yeah.
Because you got to play the AFC North. So the fact that you've built a team that feels like an AFC North team, it's a really good division. As it stands right now, it's kind of weird to see the Ravens and the Bengals at 0-2 at the bottom, with the Steelers on top at 2-0 and the Bengals at 1-1. But it's perfect. They got to play all 4 of those teams, and they're all 4 going to be physical, football games. And what you hope to come out of that is how it then applies to the AFC West. And we already saw a physical win, a dominant fourth quarter with a punishing physical brand of football to take the victory over the Raiders.
We're going to see week 4.
Going to see it in week 4 against the Chiefs, and then week 6 against the Broncos. And it's one thing to have to show up, to pack your lunch pail and show up against the AFC North, but when you can do it against the AFC West, you might be bringing a brand of football that they're not necessarily built to contend with. Now, there's a flip side of that. And that's, you're going to start seeing, you're going to see Patrick Mahomes, who's able to sling it around. And are you able to slow that down as opposed to a little more of the physical brand of football that the Raiders wanted to play? So,
yeah. Well, you lose. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but you lose Pacheco, and we'll talk about that next week after I think the Chiefs play the Falcons this week before coming to SoFi. Finally, go back to 2018, man. That was one of the more fun games, I'm sure, for you to call. The Chargers were losing by a couple of touchdowns, I think, early in that game. Came all the way back.
Pittsburgh game, yeah.
Yeah. The Justin Jackson fourth quarter.
Was that Thursday or Sunday night?
It was a Sunday night.
It was Sunday night,
The Thursday night game was the KC game.
Right.
But they won 33-30. Justin Jackson. They played Renegade, and then Justin Jackson was somehow motivated by Renegade. went down the field. They scored the touchdown to tie the game, I believe. And then I think Badgley kicked like
9 field goals
to win the game.
All the offsides.
Yeah.
Just trying to get out of there.
But
yeah.
I go back. My point is just the atmosphere is incredible.
It is.
It's going to be their home opener.
Yeah,
so
2-0.
They're going to be jacked. They're 2-0. And it's Tomlin versus Harbaugh, man. They
Yeah.
get any better.
I just want to point out, anytime Chris has an opportunity to get Northwestern Wildcat reference, and he's going to,
Well,
which is
yeah.
really the only reason he told that story about Justin Jackson.
Yeah.
So
Well,
he
I also
acknowledged
referenced Rashawn earlier
Yes,
too, having
exactly.
that All-Pro left tackle start of the season.
the greatness of his alma mater will always
only got
be
a couple of
acknowledged
them,
here.
man.
Exactly. That's what I mean. You
Got a
got to
couple.
take advantage of it, man. You know. Yeah. Look, I've said it. I don't need to say it again. It's going to be a street fight. It's going to be a rock fight. It's going to be whatever you want to call it, a knife fight. It's it's going to be gnarly. They're two really, really good, really well coached teams that like playing physical football, are comfortable playing physical football, and even if it's not producing results, will stick with it. So if it's 3 and out, don't care. Going to keep handing the ball to Najee, keep letting that 220-pound back bang into you, and hope that it wears you down with all the body blows, and figure out who can land the haymaker in the fourth quarter.
If I had to ask for one key to the game, if you had to just pick one, what would it be to win?
Bradley Bozeman. I think just let's take the very middle of that line. Cam Hayward's he is a load, man. He is a nightmare to deal with. So I think if Bradley, who's the leader of that offensive line, can get everything settled and make sure everyone's knows exactly where they're supposed to be, how they're supposed to block it up, make it as dominant as it's been through 6 quarters, then I think they win the game. I think that's, like I said at the start, this game's going to probably be won with the Chargers' offensive line versus the Steelers' defensive line.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's boring.
It's not, though.
The center is the key.
But it falls in line with everything we've said
Yeah.
over the last several months. It's going to be a gem, another Romo and Nance game on CBS.
Right.
But obviously listen to our guy here on the radio on Sunday.
I think I'm coming down with Legionnaires. I'm spending too much time in my room. There's something going on, man. I got to get the heck out of this place and just go get some fresh air.
It's Wednesday. We're going to have to pump the brakes on talking.
I'm telling you, man. It's getting brutal.
All right, guys. Hey, always a pleasure. For Buddy, I'm Chris. This has been Chargers Weekly. We'll see you in Pittsburgh.